Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another interview session with Everything Horror Podcast. My name is Stacy Cox, and I am your host this evening. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the creator of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, Brenton Lengel. Did I pronounce that right?
No, but everybody gets it wrong the first time. It's Brenton Lengel.
Thank you so much for correcting me, and thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm really excited.
So I am engrossed with Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, of course, as you can tell. Two of my favorite things to watch is Disney and horror. Please tell me, how did you come up with the story for Snow White Zombie Apocalypse?
Well, this was actually the very first play I ever had produced. Back in 2009, I moved to New York City with the intent of becoming a playwright, and I succeeded in that. But at the time, I'd only been in theater school and college. I'd written a couple of plays, but I'd never had anything produced. And I entered a competition. It was called by a company that's not around anymore, but they were called the New York Theater Experiment. And they had advertised for a 24-hour play competition. So this is where they will send out a writing prompt, and then a number of playwrights will get it, and we each write a play based upon that prompt, and then certain plays are chosen. And within 24 hours of us beginning, within 24 hours of the prompt being sent off, the play has to be written, selected, cast, and performed. So we wound up doing that. I wrote Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. The theme was fairytale smackdown. So there were a couple of fairytale things that I was supposed to use. My wife is a big fairytale fan, so that really jived with us. And then I had been wanting to write a play involving zombies for a really long time, so I put them all together. In fact, I actually I almost wanted to write. I almost wrote Zombie Shakespeare, but there was this prompt, and also I was a little worried about writing in iambic pentameter.
Wow, that sounds interesting, and not a very long window to write, but hey, you ended up coming up with this masterpiece. I mean, I enjoyed it. I honestly, this is my first time hearing about Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. So when I saw your campaign, and I backed it. And then that's when I found out you had the first one. I was like, well, I want the package that sends me both of them because, So,
Absolutely.
I did back the campaign, and I am so excited for it.
Terrific. Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah, we still have another 13 days to go, 12 after today. I don't know exactly when this will air, but hopefully it'll still be running. And we've surpassed our goal. We're up to nearly $8,000, and there will be an additional chapter written if we can hit 8,700. I'll be writing about the reign of the blood-covered king, which is a prequel. Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, it's sort of been my calling card as a writer. That play led to an amazing production. I mean, I even remember people came up to me after the first initial performance. I'm talking that's actors on stage with cardboard props and stuff. And people came up to me and were like, oh my God, where did you get the idea for this play? It reads like something that somebody who went to Yale wrote. And I said, oh, well, tell Yale about that because they rejected me.
Wow.
Yeah. But it went from there to the Estrogenius Festival, which is a really incredible festival that's put on every year. It's a celebration of female voices, and the people who Jennifer Thatcher, who's one of the producers for that, and several other people, Vincent Morano, they encountered the play, and I guess they thought it spoke to a woman's experience, or maybe they just thought it was really fun, and so they invited me to be part of that festival. We were produced in the 10-minute format by director Lita Tremblay, and she, that was kind of one of the perfect productions. The 10-minute version of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse is pretty much exactly what you got in the comic book in the issue number 1. And then a little while later, after that play had been such a success, I expanded it from Snow White Zombie was the original title to Snow White Zombie Apocalypse to differentiate it. And that's the longer story that premiered in the New York Fringe Festival in 2011. And that was produced by State of Play Productions, Inc., which is my theater company. They've brought a number of my work to the stage, and I've got some really great people. Michelle Concha and Adam Lafacci are two of the other major members of this, as well as Jessica Crean. Adam, actually, if you look at Prince Charming, he is the originator of the role of Prince Charming, and also Prince Charming in the comic book looks exactly like he does, or almost exactly like he does. It's patterned after him.
That's awesome. And now that you mentioned Prince Charming, you have the appearance of another Disney princess in the story, or at least in the first Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, Rapunzel. So is this a thing where you're kind of like, you're
I'm riffing on Disney.
But also just like bringing in different characters from different backgrounds. So it's not really all just about like Snow White. It's about other, Disney characters and everything as well. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, you could consider it the fairy tale comic universe.
Okay.
I sort of see the world of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse as if all fairy tales and probably some mythology, but mostly fairy tales, simultaneously exist within a world together. So characters from different fairy tales can meet and interact, though they may be coming from various different backgrounds and different kingdoms. Like each story might take place in a different part of the world. Snow White in this is Chinese. Rapunzel is Spanish Moroccan. The prince was originally written to be Germanic, but Adam Lafacci is Spanish, so he's taken on a very Spanish character to like the way the guy is drawn. And I intend to continue to expand that out as we get further and further into mythology. So you'll find that certain characters from the same story may have similarities to others, but also there's multiple versions of the story, and you will find even multiple versions of the same character, since these are stories that humans have been telling for centuries, if not longer.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And actually just seeing kind of like the interaction with Snow White and with Rapunzel and then with Prince Charming. I'm like, wow, this here is like, wait, this is kind of taking like a more like down-to-earth approach, if you will. Because, you think about the Disney movies and then you think about this, you're like, wow, that's not how it happened in the movie. So I can see what's going on here. But it's actually really great. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad you do. The interaction, I love that moment when Snow White awakens to Prince Charming's kiss, and Rapunzel is like, "Are you kissing a dead chick?" That and especially because it's come right off of a fight, like a really serious fight for your life. I work very hard to make sure that the horror and the comedy play off each other, and I try not to lose either, because zombies are inherently ridiculous, and fairy tales are weird. And there's a lot of potential for humor in them, but it's also very important that the characters remain grounded and that this stuff is all real to them and that they take it very, very seriously. So I think that's kind of the drama that I'm playing with this. Yeah.
So let's talk more about the continuation, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse Book 2. You touched on a little bit about it. Can you elaborate on this continuation?
Sure. So this next chapter, the first book that you've got, that's drawn by Hyondo Park, who is an absolutely incredible artist, and he is staying on. He's going to be creating a variant cover for us for the second issue. But one of the ideas that we've sort of had about this series from the beginning was that we wanted to explore different artists with it. And I try, because you hear fairy tales from different storytellers. So this next one is going to be drawn by Luana Vecchio of Image Comics. She's absolutely incredible. I'm really, really lucky to have her. And that's the art that's her art, her cover, the new one with the giant in the background, and Prince Charming, Rapunzel, and Snow White all standing in the middle. That will be the cover for the second issue, and she's going to be doing the interiors as well. And then we have a couple of other variant artists that I'm working with, but she's going to be going for at least the next 44 pages. I wanted to try to make this as equal as possible, though, depending upon how the story winds up getting written. We may go with Luana longer or come back to her as well, which is really exciting. Either way, this covers the first book covers about the first 10 minutes of a 2-hour play. The next section right now, and I'm still kind of working with the details on exactly how everything fits on the page, this should cover from the first 10 minutes, potentially up to the 50% mark of the original play, which is really, really exciting. And it's going to introduce a number of new characters. The big ones that we're getting are the Woodsman, who is kind of, I have him written as in, quote, built like a wrestler. And he is a practitioner of Kyokushin karate, which I am a black belt in that style. And he is physical. He's a physical powerhouse on par with Rapunzel. In fact, he may even be able to beat Rapunzel in a one-on-one fight. Rapunzel is absolutely incredible, and is a physical powerhouse on her own. I specifically patterned her after Bruce Lee in a lot of ways. So I'm really excited because one of the things that's going to happen in this upcoming story is they're going to fight. We've also got some other fairy tale characters joining us. You're going to see Gretel from Hansel and Gretel. You may find Hansel, but they will both be very different than what most people are going to expect. And we are introducing a new antagonist in this one, which a couple new antagonists. There's the blood-covered king, who is sort of lich-like, and he's kind of a controller zombie. We're going to be getting into him, and hopefully very deeply into him if we can hit our goal. There is also the undead giant, which is the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk. He shows up on the cover and in a lot of the art. A lot of the artists got really excited when they heard the description for this guy, so just about everybody wanted to draw him. And he is we get a lot of backstory as to how this plague began, and to what led our characters to encounter Snow White when they did in the first chapter. And spoiler, one of those things involves the giant a la Attack on Titan just absolutely wrecking Prince Charming's castle.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's... And by the way, I should also add, I just started watching Attack on Titan, so I wasn't pulling from Attack on Titan. I was only vaguely aware of it. But the idea of a giant zombie, it's one of the cooler things out there, and there's only been a couple of people that have done it. I think there was me, Attack on Titan, and Marvel Zombies also did it with Giant Man. And in fact, I think that I may have gotten the idea from Marvel Zombies. Don't tell anyone.
Wow, that all sounds so great, and I'm really excited for it. As we all know, when it comes to crowdfunding campaigns, there tends to be some challenges. First of all, congratulations on going well past your funding goal for this. But what were some of the challenges that you faced during this campaign for Snow White Zombie Apocalypse and for this continuation?
Right. Well, I mean, the first Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, that one we were able to do without crowdfunding, and I was able to create the initial art, get it picked up by a publisher. Scout Comics published us, and the book was released just this past October, and it got absolutely wonderful. Like, it got a ton of great reviews. We actually got rated as one of the top 50 indie comics of 2019. People kind of, they got the book. They're like, oh, that's great. I loved it. Now it's gone. I was like, wait. There's still a whole series here. What are you talking about? So, it was my first Kickstarter, and I got a lot of advice from other creators, which was really helpful. And I have worked as a fundraiser in the past, so I think that kind of helped me come along and figure out, exactly how I was going to do it. And luckily, also, I am perennially online, so I had a large backing of people who were kind of ready to keep an eye on what I was doing before I went in. But yeah, it was terrifying. Launching my first Kickstarter ever. There was a lot of planning that had to be done, and also I had to make sure that there was a lot of art that was created ahead of time so that I had something to offer people once we hit it. I also, had to get a friend to edit my video because I don't know anything about video editing. But all in all, these things really came together, and we got funded within 10 days. It was really incredible.
Yeah, that's very awesome. If you could do anything differently during the, campaign process, what would you change?
There's a couple of things. One of the big things that I think I would change about it is I would cut down on the overall number of pledges, and I would really make my page a lot simpler. I kind of am somebody that believes more is more, and I get very excited about things. I want to add this premium and that premium and all this stuff, and then I realize people just don't read it. So I think if I could launch it again, it might be a little more, slim and easier to follow completely. But a lot of things about the way it launched was just perfect, though. I remember I was really worried about Kickstarter because they had a big fight with the potential union going on, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to feel so guilty launching on Kickstarter when there's no union. And then the day that I launched was the day Kickstarter unionized, within an hour of the launch. And that was really exciting for me, and felt like, again, lightning striking, just the right amount of serendipity. So yeah, I don't think I'd really changed that much from the way I launched. There are maybe some things that I might have changed in how I marketed everything, but all in all, I think the biggest change is I might not have bothered so many of my friends for so long to get them to give. I think I annoyed a couple of them, but it is what it is. As an artist, one of the big things is that we have to be champions of our own work. And, you got to put in the time and the hours to make sure that people pay attention.
Oh, yeah, I definitely experienced that. So what element of your work gives you the most personal satisfaction?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. With Snow White Zombie in particular, I think what gives me the most satisfaction is when I encounter a fan who has the exact reaction to what I was creating that I wanted in my head. There's so many times I'm writing Snow White Zombie and this great idea comes to me or something, and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be so cool. And sometimes it works out that people experience that moment and love it as much as I do in my head, and other times they're like, what was that? So one of the great things was that on a recent show, which is Pete's Basement, they do a comic review show, and they had me on for an interview. And they really reacted to the moment in Snow White in the first issue where Rapunzel has done her 1-inch punch and she's broken the big bad wolf's Granny Wolf's ribs, and then out from Granny Wolf a grandma zombie breaks out. Now you've got a 4-armed, 2-headed zombie that you're going to fight. When I came up with that, I was just like, yes, this is the coolest thing I've ever written. And And then like the book was out, and I'm reading the reviews, and I'm like, nobody's mentioning this. What's going on? Was it not cool? Was it just dumb? And then like Pete Spaceman's review came out, and they're like, oh my gosh, when the grandma pops out of the wolf zombie, and I was just like, yes, somebody gets it.
Yes, I definitely was not prepared for that. Actually, reading the first issue, it was a few twists in there that I was not prepared for, but it was very enjoyable.
I'm glad. I'm really glad.
So, for aspiring comic writers, what advice do you have to give as far as, the character and story structure and foundation?
Well, I mean, I got a lot of advice to give in general. I would say, if you're an aspiring comic writer who has a little bit of money, you can actually pay me to help you out on that. That's one of I have 3 premiums on the Kickstarter, 3 different levels where you can actually get my professional aid. The first one, I give you coverage on one thing that you've written. The second one, you take a masterclass with me for, once a week for 6 months. And then like the main one, like you basically get me in your corner and I take you through the process of creating and selling a comic. So, I mean, I've got a ton of advice to give, but that's
that's good to know.
Yeah, and it's very useful. This is stuff I learned 10 years in New York. I'm not just a comic writer. I'm a playwright, is how I started. I'm also, working on a novel with a band called the Crew Shadows that should be out in the next couple of years. I'm a trained screenwriter. I trained through Jacob Kruger Studios, and I learned, to write action underneath a guy who used to write for Xena and Hercules, and I learned drama underneath a guy who would write. He was a former HBO exec, and then another guy I learned comedy from. He used to write for Arrested Development and Married with Children. So any kind of writer, honestly, basic stuff like writing the drama and figuring out the characters, that's definitely some advice that something I know a bit about. But then like even with comics themselves, if you're an aspiring comic creator, you don't just want to think in terms of all stories, drama in one medium is going to be drama in another. But in the comics medium, what you really need to think about, I would say, is you really need to think visually and to think from panel to panel, because you want to be able to play with the passage of time, because that's what comics are. When you move from panel to panel, it's you're controlling how quickly someone views time. But also, what you want to look at is you want to remember that you're not just working visually, you're also working with words. People like to read comics. And like one of the things that surprised me was when I first came in on Snow White Zombie on the initial one, there was almost no dialogue for the first half of the comic. And I was like, oh, people are going to love this because I'm just focusing so heavily on visual storytelling, and comics are a visual medium. And, the biggest note I got from my other artist friends are like, where's the words? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And they're like, well, you just fight for almost 20 pages here. And there's nothing to read. And what I found out that they were doing was, because there were no words to read, even though the art was incredible, but they were just breezing through it. They weren't spending a lot of time on one panel or another. They were just like, oh yeah, I see this, I see this, I see this. So then I went in and I added narration. And adding the narration to the script forces the reader to slow down and start to consider each panel by panel. And I found that people had a much better experience reading the story once that was in there. So, I guess that's my advice. If you're doing comics, you need to be not just thinking visually, and you need to not just be thinking like in overall page composition and temporally from panel to panel, but you also really need to make sure that, you as a writer do not neglect the words.
Yes, I can definitely see that because, as I mentioned, I'm not really good at reading comics, and I'm looking at the pictures, and then I'm looking at the narration. I'm like, okay, so how do you get to where the pictures telling the story? So me trying to turn my 200 something page novel into a comic, I'm just like, I am so lost. What am I doing here? So yeah, I definitely understand that. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing also is that each medium kind of they like what's dramatic on stage and dramatic in a novel and dramatic in a comic. It's always going to be the same. But you really want to try to pare things down and to utilize the strengths of the medium that you're in as much as possible. Because what works in a comic dramatically does not necessarily work dramatically in a novel or a screenplay or vice versa. So, I guess the best advice to an aspiring writer is just keep writing and do as much as you can. Like, the big difference between a professional writer and an amateur, to tell you the truth, is professional writers write a lot more bad crap than amateurs do. But, the 10% of the good stuff that we write, we keep banging it out and keep working and working and working, that's what makes it out there. So I find, like, every time I write something new, I get better. And I can look back at some of my old work and think, oh, I made a mistake here, or I made a mistake there. But, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to make those mistakes to get to the next step.
Thank you. That is very inspiring, very encouraging, and I'm actually excited. So before we wrap up, please share any other future projects you're working on and how people can find more information about Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, as well as share your contact information and social media platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brenton Lengel. You can just Google my name if you want to find me, Brenton Lengel. I'm literally the only one in the world. My website is www.brentonlengel.com. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. The Twitter for Snow White Zombie is @SnowWhiteBones. And there's a Facebook page for Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. The Kickstarter, just Google Snow White Zombie Apocalypse Kickstarter. And, like I said, we've only got we got a handful of more days, and I really want to hit these stretch goals, so please check those out. As far as projects that I have coming up, anybody who's interested in cons, they'll find me at Dragon Con in Georgia this coming September, assuming the thing doesn't get shut down for coronavirus. And I will be there like I am every year with the Crew Shadows. They're an incredible band. I highly recommend you check them out. Rogue, the lead singer, in 2005 they beat out Madonna and Beyonce for the #1 dance hit in the world. And me and Rogue, the lead singer, are collaborating on a fantasy novel set in the afterlife that begins when the main character dies, called After All. The Snow White Zombie series will continue, and also I am looking to do a series called NPCs about the lives of non-player characters in role-playing games, and I want to. That originally started out as a web series, and I'm looking to hopefully very soon release that as a comic series, and that one will be more straight-up comedy as opposed to horror comedy. You can also find my dramatic work online. A number of my stuff has been published. The New Play Exchange has a lot of my plays, and I am the author of North to Maine, which is the first play ever about the Appalachian Trail. I'm a AT through hiker. I've walked from Maine to Georgia. So that's, if any of your audience is interested in the wilderness or hiking, you can check that out. Because, I'm not saying I'm not nearly as buff as the Woodsman, but he's kind of based on me. Well, all the characters are a little based on me, but him more than others.
I'm definitely looking forward to meeting the other characters.
The other thing that I wanted to say is if you go on the Kickstarter, there's a lot of really great premiums that you can get. The ones that I'm going to point you in the direction of, you got the Alpha Wolf premium, I think, so you've got copies of the first 2 comics. But, there's also, as I said, my professional services are available. You can get posters. You can buy yourself a cameo in Swaza, either as a character or as an extra, like a zombie or somebody that gets horribly killed. And then, up at the very tip top, I'm a New York State certified wilderness guide. And if you've got the money for it, I will take you and 2 of your friends to Iceland for the adventure of a lifetime through the Icelandic wilderness. And
Wow.
that's my standout Kickstarter premium. And it's not a joke. I really want people to do it because I want to go back there. I've led 3 hikes along that area. So definitely check that out.
Wow, those are all great premiums. This is another session with Everything Horror Podcast. My name is Stacey Cox, and I was your host this evening. I've had the pleasure of being joined by Brenton Lengel. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an honor.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Stacey. This was a blast.
Everyone have a great evening and stay scary.